I've been exactly where you are right now. You're doing keto. You're tracking your carbs. You're avoiding sugar. You're checking ketone levels. Maybe you've even lost some weight. But every time you look in the mirror, that stubborn belly fat seems completely untouched. And after a while, a thought starts creeping into your head that nobody in the keto community wants to admit. What if keto just doesn't work for me? That was the question I found myself asking after nearly 8 months. Not 8 days, not 8 weeks, 8 months. I was following the rules. My carbs stayed below 25 grams most days. My blood sugar was stable. My energy was decent. Friends told me I looked leaner. But the one place I wanted to see change most, my midsection, barely seemed to be responding. And what happened next completely changed the way I think about fat loss. Because the solution wasn't a supplement. It wasn't a different workout. It wasn't eating fewer carbs. In fact, the thing that finally moved the needle was something I had been convinced was helping my results. And if you're doing keto right now, there's a very good chance you're making the exact same mistake. Let me explain. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror one morning comparing photos I had taken months apart. I expected to see a dramatic difference. After all, I had been disciplined for months. Instead, I felt disappointed. Yes, there was some progress. My face looked leaner, my clothes fit a little better, but the lower belly fat that had motivated me to start keto in the first place was still hanging around. That moment forced me to ask a different question. What if the problem wasn't ketosis? What if the problem was everything surrounding ketosis? That question sent me down a rabbit hole that eventually led me to one hormone, cortisol. Now, before anyone jumps into the comments, I'm not saying cortisol is the sole reason people struggle with belly fat. Fat loss is influenced by many factors, including calorie intake, activity levels, sleep, genetics, protein intake, and overall health. But what I discovered is that cortisol may be one of the most overlooked reasons some people hit a wall despite doing everything else right. And here's where it gets fascinating: visceral fat. The deeper abdominal fat that accumulates around your organs appears to be particularly responsive to stress hormones. Researchers have found that abdominal fat cells contain a high concentration of glucocorticoid receptors, which are the receptors cortisol interacts with. In simple terms, your midsection is one of the places where chronic stress tends to leave its fingerprints. Suddenly, a lot of things started making sense. Because when I looked honestly at my routine, I realized I wasn't just doing keto. I was doing aggressive keto. I was skipping breakfast every day. I was drinking 3 or 4 large coffees before eating anything. I was stretching my fasting window longer and longer because everyone online said longer. Fasting meant faster fat loss. Some days I wouldn't eat until 2 in the afternoon. Then I'd consume most of my calories in a relatively short period before bed. On paper, it looked disciplined. But my body may have been interpreting it very differently. For some people, combining calorie restriction, prolonged fasting, heavy caffeine intake, poor recovery, and life stress can increase physiological stress rather than reduce it. And the truth is, I was stressed, not just from dieting, from work, from deadlines, from lack of sleep, from trying to optimize every aspect of my health all at once. The irony was almost comical. I was trying so hard to become healthier that I may have been creating an environment that made fat loss harder. So I decided to run an experiment. Not for a few days, not for a week, for an entire month. And the first thing I changed was completely counterintuitive. I started eating breakfast again. Not pancakes, not cereal, not anything high carb, just a small keto meal within a reasonable time after waking up. Usually eggs, avocado, some greens, occasionally smoked salmon. Nothing fancy, nothing magical, just food. The second change was reducing my caffeine intake. Instead of drinking coffee on an empty stomach all morning, I limited myself to 1 or 2 cups and had them after eating. The third change was even simpler. Every evening after dinner, I took a 10 to 15-minute walk. Not a workout, not cardio, just a walk. And I made sleep a non-negotiable priority. Those were the only major changes. My carbs stayed low, my protein stayed similar, my calories remained relatively stable. I was still doing keto, but I was creating a much less stressful environment around keto. What happened next genuinely surprised me. About 2 weeks in, I noticed something before I saw anything. I felt different. My energy became steadier. The afternoon crashes disappeared. I wasn't constantly thinking about food. I woke up feeling more recovered. Then I started noticing less bloating around my waist. Then my clothes fit differently. Then the photos started changing. And here's the moment that convinced me something important was happening. Around 6 weeks later, I compared new progress pictures to the ones that had frustrated me months earlier. The difference was obvious, more obvious than the previous several months combined. Not overnight, not dramatically, but undeniably. And that's when I realized something that completely changed my perspective. Ketosis alone doesn't guarantee your body will aggressively burn stored body fat. You can be burning dietary fat while eating a high fat keto diet and still struggle to access significant amounts of stored fat. The broader hormonal environment matters. Sleep matters, stress matters, recovery matters, and sometimes the thing standing between you and better results isn't more discipline, it's less physiological stress. Now, does this mean everyone should stop fasting? No. Does it mean cortisol is always the problem? Absolutely not. Some people thrive with longer fasting windows. Some people see fantastic results drinking coffee all morning. Human biology is rarely one size fits all, but if you've been doing keto for months and feel like your belly fat is refusing to cooperate despite your best efforts, it may be worth looking beyond your carb count. Ask yourself some honest questions. How much sleep are you getting? How stressed are you? Are you constantly hungry? Are you relying heavily on caffeine? Are you pushing fasting windows because they're helping or because you think you're supposed to? Sometimes the breakthrough comes from removing a roadblock, not pushing harder on the gas pedal. That's certainly what happened for me. For 8 months, I thought my body was resisting keto. I thought I needed more discipline, more restriction, more fasting, more effort. What I eventually discovered was almost the opposite. My body wasn't broken. My metabolism wasn't failing. My body was responding exactly the way a stressed human body is designed to respond. And the moment I started working with my biology instead of fighting against it, everything began to change. If you're stuck where I was, try this approach consistently for 30 days. Not because it's magic, not because it's guaranteed, but because sometimes the thing preventing progress isn't the diet itself. It's the environment you've built around it, and that single realization might be the breakthrough you've been looking for all along.